everybody, we're off, and it is Thursday, 8th of December. I've just realised I need to knock the brightness down on my iPad, otherwise you're going to get reflections. Whoops, what happened there? So let me just get this sorted out. It is only just Thursday, 8th of December as well. Oh, you stupid thing. Because kids have been playing up, nearly all three of them, hence me, what is it? 11:30. So I need to somehow get this recorded and do another one and edit and upload before 12 o'clock. It's not going to happen, but yeah, it's going to be a late one, simply because my kids have decided that they don't want to go to sleep and they want to be ill and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, I am tired. So these are going to be pretty quick ones as well. So the first one I'm going to do is Mortlach. Mortlach Rare Old. This was a sample very kindly donated by my good friend Ollie Chilton. Thank you, Ollie. Thank you very much. And the Mortlach distillery is here in Dufftown, and it was actually the first distillery that was established in Dufftown, or Dufftown. Dufftown? I'm going to go with Dufftown, although it's probably Dufftown. And it was founded in 1823 by a guy called James Finlater. He sold it in 1831, and it had a number of owners, up to the point that J&J Grant bought the distillery. Now J&J Grant owned Glen Grant, and they bought the distillery in 1837, took all of the equipment out. They didn't own Glen Grant, they took all the equipment out to create Glen Grant, and just kind of left Mortlach as a bit of a shell. So not very nice, bit harsh, but they were basically the case of, right, well, we're going to do our own distillery, we'll buy that one and we'll just take everything out and use it. So it sat there until 1852. It was a temporary church at one point. There was a new church being built, and the church of whatever, the congregation were using the one of the warehouses, I think, as a temporary church, and it was also used as a brewery as well, until 1852, where it was then reopened by another sort of conglomerate. No real big names, but it did include somebody who started working for them as a bookkeeper, worked for them for 20 years, a gentleman by the name of William Grant, who ended up leaving in 1887 to set up another distillery that you might have heard of called Glenfiddich. So, excuse me, Mortlach's had not the luckiest of histories, to be perfectly honest. It was bought by John Walker and Sons in 1923, and has remained with Johnny Walker. DCL is now part of the Diageo stables, and it's a very, very big component of Johnny Walker Black Label in particular. Now, Mortlach was difficult to find because it was so key in Johnny Walker Black, and there wasn't really any necessity for them to sell it as a single malt. But in 2013, Diageo suddenly announced that they were basically looking to push for super premium ranges, essentially expensive stuff. And Mortlach was going to be launched as a new range of more premium whiskies. So there was previously a 16-year-old Flora and Fauna range, version, release, whatever you want to call it, and it was then replaced in 2013-2014 by this new Mortlach range, which includes this rare old. So this is the sample, this is what the bottle looks like. So it's a no age statement, and you're looking at about 43 quid at the Whisky Exchange, 45 quid at Master and Malt. So it's not cheap for a no age statement. It's bourbon and sherry matured maturation, bourbon and sherry casks. And they've got, they can actually do partial triple distillation. So they distill once, distill twice, and then use some of the remainder to sort of distill it again. So it's not quite triple distillation, because they're not using the second spirit to distill that. They're kind of using a bit of everything to do another run as well. So the previous Mortlach 16 was known as, I think it was almost known as the Beast of Speyside. It was very heavily sherried. It was quite a full-on whiskey. Supposedly this version is a bit more subdued, shall we say. It's a bit lighter in style, but let's see how we go. But it is one of those where, you know, it's an impressive bit of packaging. It has to be said. I do like the bottle, but it's one of those where, you know, is it more style over content? Yes, it looks impressive, but it's a no age statement. Colorings, whether coloring's been added or not, I would guess so, because it's a pretty healthy color. You know, obviously no age statement, there's anything from 3 to 30 in there. But it's that dark that it would suggest to me that colouring's been added. There is a slight hint of that edge, that slightly artificial plastic edge that I associate with colouring, and it wouldn't surprise me if colouring's been added to it. There's a slight there's almost a slight graininess to it as well. Having said that, there is quite a sweetness. There is a sort of a slightly lighter sherry influence to it as well. This reminds me of a blended whiskey more than a single malt, weirdly. It's got that slight edge, that slight sharpness of grain whiskey, as well as the malty toffee character of a malt whiskey. I'll be honest, if I was trying this blind, I would have said this was a blend, definitely. Just purely on the nose. And do you know what? I probably would have said it's a blend on the palate as well. There's quite a nice, there's quite a rich mouthfeel to it. And it starts off very malty, very fudgy as well. Quite a soft, almost melting fudge character. But then it's surrounded by a sharpness which screams to me grain whiskey, grain in a blended whiskey. There's a little bit of a heat to it as well. It's, what are we looking at? 43.4%. But it's got a heat to it that suggests it's slightly more than that, almost like 46. It's quite chewy. And it really is kind of, on the finish, what's left in your mouth is the aftermath of eating like a bar of fudge, or if you've ever come across tablet, which is, I've never even heard of tablet. I've heard of tablets, obviously, but we're not talking about iPads and Android. We're talking about it's a Scottish sweet that is essentially fudge, but it's hard fudge. It's really hard. You know, you sort of bite into a bar of tablet, and it really kind of like, but it's not crunchy. It's like it's almost like you've put fudge in a freezer. It's got like that texture, and it's a bit more sugary. It's still fudgy, but it's not quite as creamy, and there's a bit more of a sugary element, and it's not too far off the flavour in this. It's more of a sugary fudginess, but then surrounding it is this sharpness. There's this edge to it. It really does taste like a blended whiskey. A blended whiskey with a high malt content, don't get me wrong, but considering the price, if you were given this blind, you probably would have said it's a blended whiskey, but it's got a high malt content in it. I'd probably say 25 quid. You know, it's a blended whiskey, but it's a very good blended whiskey. So I would go for something, you know, 25 at max 30 quid blended whiskey. You know, we're talking like, you know, a good, solid, dependable blended whiskey. For a 45 quid no age statement single malt, I'm a little hesitant. Now, I don't know whether I've got my hopes up because I really like the packaging, because it's a highly regarded single malt. I've never had Mortlach before, or not that I can remember anyway, but you know, it was one that was quite highly regarded. Obviously it's Diageo, so you know, they've got a lot of good whiskies. And whatever you think about Diageo, you can't not say that they haven't got a fantastic selection of distilleries and whiskies available. But there's not, it's too blended whiskey for me, and not enough of a single malt character. There's too much of an edge, there's too much fire to it. It's biting too much. It's biting too much around the edge of my mouth. It bites too hard on the tip of my tongue. This tablet character that's there is nice, but there's too much fire surrounding it. There's too much sharpness, too much youth almost. It's like it's a no age statement, and they've got quite a lot of very, very young whiskey in here. That it needs to mellow out. It needs to be older whiskies put into it to really knock that edge off. It's too young for a no age statement whiskey. It really is. There's too much young stuff. I'd hazard a guess at 5-8-year-old is in there, and there's a pretty large constituent of that as well, because the bite that's there is too bitey. it's like a puppy dog, you know. It's like Harley used to be when he was like a few months old, and he just used to bite everything, and this is biting, and it's got a lovely character underneath it, not quite like Harley, but you know, it's there's a nice softness that you just want to kind of like push all this harshness away and go, give me more of that. It's a bit of a shame, really, and a bit of a letdown. And I have to say, God, that really got me in the back of the throat. I've got to say, if I bought a bottle of that, of my hard-earned, I think I'd be a little bit disappointed. I think I would be kind of like, oh, it's really nice packaging, it's a lovely bottle, oh, I'm really looking forward to this. I think I'd feel a little bit let down. I'd be interested to know what other people think, whether they think it's worth the money, but I think it's a little overpriced, unfortunately. Now, the rest of the range, I can't even remember what it is, but I would think age statements, I can imagine older versions of Mortlach are probably going to be actually really good. And there's enough in there that makes me want to try an age statement version, whether I could get my hands on the old 16-year-old Flora and Fauna, or one of the older age statement versions of the new range, which I'm sure there is. I just don't really think that's a great advert for what Mortlach potentially could be. But there we go. Right, that's me done. Bit longer than I was hoping for, so I shall do a quick rinse out, and I shall see you in the next one. Cheers.